Good evening, my name is Brian Manley. I'm the Chief of Staff for the Austin Police Department. I've got Chief Gay, Chief McElvain, I've got Commander South, I've got Louis Gonzalez with the Police Monitor's Office, I've got Lieutenant Stevenson with Internal Affairs, and then Mike Cronin. As you all are aware, we had an officer-involved shooting occur earlier this evening, and it all began at 5:05 p.m. when Austin Police Department received a 911 call for the 9800 block of North IH-35. This is a business on the east frontage road of North IH-35, and the caller reported that there was a male outside the business armed with a knife. We were given a description of a black male wearing black long-sleeve shirt and pants, and that the suspect was in the parking lot threatening a customer in the parking lot. So this was the call that our officers were dispatched to. Well, the officers were en route. The complainant stated they were locking the doors to their business, and during this time, before the officers arrived, we received multiple other calls on this suspect, again indicating that he was in the parking lot, involved in a disturbance, and armed with a knife. Our officers arrived on scene at 5:10 p.m. and began their search of the scene for this suspect. They ultimately located him behind the business, and several officers encountered him, giving him commands. At this point, he was armed with knives. They gave him commands to drop those knives, and again attempted him to take him into custody at that point. The subject fled from the officers, and at one point he actually fled across the frontage road. He ran across IH-35 northbound lanes, jumped the median wall, ran across IH-35 southbound lanes, and crossed this side of IH-35 frontage road as well. Our officers at that point obviously are broadcasting to other officers that he's now fled across the freeway. They're all getting back to their vehicles so that they can safely get to this side of the highway. We were quickly able to set up a perimeter on this side of the highway to try and get this suspect into custody with multiple officers that were in the area. We encountered this suspect behind a tire shop about a block up from the business where we're at. And again, the officers tried to take him into custody there, and he fled from the scene. We had an officer come down the frontage road again, trying to get ahead of where the suspect was, and he turned onto Showplace Lane right behind us, and at that point he observed the suspect in this parking lot. The officer got out of his vehicle. He was armed with his shotgun at this point, and he gave commands to this suspect. We can hear on the in-car camera multiple commands to drop the knives. We can hear the officer broadcast to dispatch that he has the suspect at gunpoint, giving him commands, but he's not compliant. Again, multiple commands to drop the knives, and then at this point you can hear gunfire on the in-car camera. On the camera you can see at a distance the subject runs, the officer runs as well. During this, again, when the officer showed up, the suspect runs, the officer runs after him, we hear the gunfire. They end up running off camera behind the building, and again we can hear the officer giving commands to drop the knives, and then again you hear another gunshot. At that point, other officers have arrived on scene, and a lengthy foot pursuit begins. We realized that there was a possibility that this individual was struck by gunfire during this encounter, so we did dispatch EMS to have them on scene so that when we located the subject, we would have EMS on scene to provide medical assistance if necessary. We had a lengthy search for this suspect with officers from across the city, realizing the threat that he had posed and the possibility that he had been struck by our gunfire. It took us over an hour and a half to locate this subject after our initial encounter with him here in this parking lot. We used ground officers, we used multiple canine teams, we had Starflight up initially, and then our own Air 1 came in and relieved Starflight, again all in an attempt to locate this individual for the safety of the community as well as for his medical attention had he been struck. We ultimately found him hiding inside a vehicle in the 9800 block of Oriole Lane, which is behind this business parking lot here. He was hiding in a vehicle. Given the earlier interactions with him, we had several officers attempt to take him into custody at that location. We also had a canine team there. The subject was non-compliant with the officers as they tried to take him into custody, and one of the canine teams did contact him. He did get bit by one of the dogs as he was taken into custody. As soon as the scene was safe, we immediately brought EMS in to render first aid assistance, and he was then transported to a local hospital for treatment what appears to be a gunshot wound, as well as the bite from the police service animal. The officer involved in this incident will be placed on administrative duty, as is standard procedure for all officer-involved shootings, and we're in the very preliminary stages of this investigation, so there's not a lot more information we can give at this time. As always, we'll open it up for a few questions, but again, we're very early on in the investigation tonight.
What's the name of the officer?
We're not going to release his name at this point. That will be released later on this week.
Was the suspect also tased at any point?
I'm sorry?
Did the suspect get tasered at any point?
We do not have any information that the suspect was tased at this point.
Besides the bite wound and the gunshot wound, is he in, like, what kind of condition is the suspect in at this point?
I have not received any actual medical status from the hospital, but we do not believe at this point, we have no information that any of his injuries are life-threatening.
Is there any indication as to why he had a knife? Could he have had some type of mental issue or anything?
That'll all be part of the ongoing investigation. The multiple callers described some erratic behavior, the yelling, the fact that he was armed with the knives, but that will all be part of the ongoing investigation. Obviously, he's being treated at a hospital right now, so we may end up getting additional information on that as this investigation continues.
Any of the officers injured in this?
No, our officers were not injured.
Where was he shot in his body?
That's part of the ongoing investigation, but at this point we believe it's up in the shoulder area.
How many rounds total were fired by the officer?
That's part of the ongoing investigation.
Are the officers on any kind of federal task force or any federal service that would give them exemption from the law?
I'm not aware if the officers ever served on a task force.
And to clarify, it was just one officer that fired shots? Nobody
That's correct, just one officer.
One more question.
Were there any shots fired at the scene where they were trying to get him out of the car that he was found in? Even rubber bullets or anything else?
No, there were. I'm sorry. There were no lethal shots were fired at the scene. We may have used a less lethal to break a window. That's part of the ongoing investigation. I know that some stations aired earlier that we fired a shot. I believe we may have fired a less lethal weapon to break a window so that we could safely take him into custody and see what was going on inside that vehicle. I did not mention this earlier, you have not asked, but the individual involved in this, he was described as a black male subject. We do believe that we have him identified as a black male subject, 34 years of age.
What's his name?
We're not going to release that at this time.
And no one else involved, this was just the one person?
Just that one person that we're aware of at this point was involved in this incident. Thank y'all.